It's time. My official 2023-24 Dallas Stars season prediction. Where do the Stars finish this year? Find out next on Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm Joey Erickson, former producer of 105.3 The Fan and play-by-play voice of the Chippewa Steel, and it is time. Happy Game Day Eve to everybody out there that celebrates, all you Stars fans, as the Stars are getting the season going tomorrow at the American Airlines Center against the St. Louis Blues. I should say the St. Louis Blues, not the Saint. I have a tough time saying that. I went to St. Cloud State. I did the same thing for years. But it's nice to open up at home. I feel like we've gotten lucky where the Stars seem to open up their season a lot at home. It just feels much more right. So very excited for that. Thank you so much for making this your first listen of the day. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe. Don't miss an episode of Locked On Stars. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. So let's talk a bit about my official predictions here for the 2023-24 season. And I've kind of broken it down. Start with the Central Division and then talk a bit about the Western Conference in general. Where did the Stars kind of fall into place there? And then how I think the Stars season will end. I have a lot of things to say. I feel like there's tons of information that's in my cranium. I'm going to try to relay that in a nice way for everybody here that is listening or watching on YouTube. And we'll see how much time I get into, because there's a lot of things I feel like I want to throw out there, and I have thoughts and things on. So we'll start here in the Central. I think the Stars win the Central Division this year. I think they've taken a step in the offseason. Of course, they got Matt Duchene. They re-signed Evgeny Dodonov. You lost guys, of course, like Glendening and Kiviranta, but you don't lose a whole lot there. And you brought guys in like Craig Smith and Sam Steele to kind of fill that void. So much depth. Niels Lundqvist looks like he had a great offseason, had a good preseason. I don't know what to take of that yet, but he looks bigger, looks stronger. Good signs. You'll have Thomas Harley in a first full season. The back end, for all the times I've said too that, there's question marks and there's concerns, it may be a bit overblown. They weren't terrible last year, and I think their personnel is better this year. So it can. I don't think it can get worse. And it wasn't bad. I mean, this is a top 10 team in the NHL that didn't allow many goals, and they've been that way for years, right? They were in goals against per game. They were one of the best, and of course, you got Jake Oettinger in net, who's going to be at the top of that conversation at all times. So, for as much as concerns I've talked about it, I just felt like it's just one of the few storylines to really dig into with this team, because we kind of understand what the offense is. And that was really the only thing that was maybe questionable with some of your pairings. Are you finally going to split up Miro and Suter? Doesn't look like they're going to, but you now split up Lindell and Hakanpää, have more mobile defensemen with them. It looks like they're going to be in good hands, and we'll see 10 to 15 games into the season if they are or they're not. But I don't think it's not going to be some huge, gigantic drop off, because I think their personnel is better, frankly. And of course, you'll have Hanley in the wings, and a guy that you can use when necessary. So I think they finished first in front of the Colorado Avalanche, and of course, Colorado's fantastic. We'll have to see how they fare without Landeskog for a full season, which they'll be high flying and no issues, I'm sure. They have a great back end too. I mean, Devon Tays is fantastic. Cale Makar, of course, is world class. Gerard is another guy that I like. Johnson's your good, stay at home, veteran guy, experienced. They'll be a good team. I just think the Stars, for how fantastic of a regular season they had last year, finishing with 108 points, I don't see them regressing. I think they can only get a bit better in year 2 under DeBoer too, with the pieces that they've added and the in-house fixes that they've found for solutions like Niels Lundqvist and certain guys like that. I think they go 50, 22, and 10 is my record. So it's a 3-win improvement, 2-point improvement, which isn't great, but you're going to have to be in the high hundreds probably or I should say 110s ish to probably win this division. So I think they do that. They have a few less losses and they play a lot of overtime, but they win more of them. is my goal. I think the overtime woes fix just a bit. I think they end up on the right side of those. So I think they have 10 lots, which is still a lot, but in this league, there's so much parity. And it doesn't matter who you play on an every night basis. That stretch in February, I think it was last year, when the Stars were playing like the bottom 3 teams, it seemed like every other day, and they just could not put them away. They went to overtime so much. And there's going to be lulls, right? There's ebbs and flows in a long 82 game stretch. So I think they fix some of their OT issues. They win a bit more, but they still play a lot. So 50, 22, and 10, they get to 50 wins under Pete DeBoer, which is a 3-win improvement. How I think the Central Division falls. The top 3 I feel are pretty solidified. I'm going to go Dallas, Colorado Wild. Those teams just look like they're going to be the horses in this division. They're the 3 most stable. You have experience, and they did offseason. They made really key moves to get better, right? And in Minnesota, you bring in Pat Maroon, which I don't think does a whole lot for you, but let's face it, he plays the exact type of game they want to play. Case in hint, the last preseason game and the one before that when he fell in Wedgwood. He's exactly what they're looking for. Dean Evanson loves that guy. They've now signed 3 of their guys for, I guess, short-term extensions. You got Ryan Hartman. I can't remember who was the other one. It was Boldy, I believe, signed or Tuheim. So they're kind of set with some of their core. They've re-signed some of their guys, and I think they're ready to rock. And they'll be in the hunt too. That's a team that you can't count out. They're gritty. They're always in the hunt. Not be surprised if they're nipping on the heels of the Stars at all. After that, I like St. Louis this year. I really do. Of course, it falls mainly on, are we going to see Jordan Binnington again? Are we going to get Jordan Binnington? What goaltender and netminder are we going to see this year? It kind of falls on him, but it's just a team that works hard and not afraid to get it going. Craig Berube, I think, is excellent. I think they like him there, of course, and they'll battle for him. And he's kind of on probably the end of his hot seat, right? He's getting to that point where he's been around for a while now. And in this league, once you've overstayed your welcome, you're almost out automatically. And they need to start seeing results. Of course, a little bit of a transition, but I think they're kind of that sneaky surprise team that maybe jumps into a wild card spot, or is at least there at the end of the season. Then I have Winnipeg, Nashville, Arizona, and then Chicago. Sorry, Bedard, you're not going to be enough to fix those woes. And we'll see how that shapes up. Winnipeg, good team. They re-signed now Hellenbuck for a few years, but Bonus was there, and he seemed to just burn bridges on the way out. Not even on the way out, but at the end of last season. So who knows? Nashville's going to be interesting. Of course, you see Saros is phenomenal. Yossi is phenomenal. Forsberg is great, but you lose Duchene and Johansson. You had to get them off the books. So they're going to be looking for new guys to contribute. And can they do it at a high level? That time will tell, right? And for that. And then, of course, Arizona could be a huge surprise team too. Who knows? They got nothing to play for. They have nothing to lose. That's a dangerous team to play. And then of course Chicago. But those two teams are kind of rebuilding. And then Nashville, who knows? Maybe they can sustain it. They were in the hunt. I mean, all the way up to the end last year. You didn't think so, but they went on a huge run. And of course, Calgary was being atrocious. Winnipeg was atrocious in the final month of the season. So it gave Nashville some life. Who knows what kind of season you're going to expect out of the Predators? They have some guys, but they'll have some question marks up front. I think the Stars are the deepest team in the conference, or not the conference, I should say. I think they're the deepest team in the Central for sure. It just seems the four lines that are going to be very, very productive for you. The defense, not as deep as you would probably like. I don't know if it's not going to be the best decor in the division. I think Colorado gets you there, but they're very serviceable. And who knows, they could be by the end of the year if guys like Harley and Lundqvist go crazy, and if maybe Lindell bounces back to what we have been accustomed to. Maybe Hakanpää takes a step in the right direction, right? Those are things that are yet to be seen. And if they do, man, the Stars team is going to be very, very tough to beat. That's why I think they win the Central this year, 50, 22, and 10, get 50 wins. They improve a bit on their OT, but they still play a bunch. Okay, we got to get into the next one, this next segment, and we'll talk about this wild, wild Western Conference. Where do the Stars fit into there? Do they win the West? We'll see. And we'll touch on that in just a bit. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by Sleeper. The NHL season is finally here, as we all know, and will the Vegas Golden Knights reign supreme again? I love the NHL. I know you love the NHL, and that's why I have to tell you about Sleeper, the go-to platform for daily fantasy sports, especially fantasy hockey. With Sleeper, you have a chance to win 100 times your cash on daily fantasy. It's never been more exciting in the National Hockey League. McDavid, Crosby, Robertson, Ovechkin, all of those stars, and you can just simply select more or less based on their stats, such as goals, assists, points, saves, and more. Yeah, you heard me. That's all you need to do, Stars fans. They offer 100-time payouts. Start paying attention, make the right picks, and you could win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. This show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Do you ever feel like your brain is getting in its own way when you're trying to fall asleep at night and you have all these racing thoughts and they keep you awake? Like you know what you should do, what's good for you, but you just can't do it. Therapy helps you figure out what's holding you back so you can work for yourself instead of against yourself. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designated to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge, because you want to find the one that works for you. Make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnhl today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnhl. Okay, let's talk a bit about this Western Conference. Not as good as the East, it seems like every year. It seems like the East has these teams that are just blowing everybody away. And of course, Boston was a bit of an anomaly last year in having the best regular season ever. Look how that worked out for him at the end of the day. But the East always seems to be a much tighter conference, and the West kind of spreads out as it goes along. It's just not as deep right now. And there's just a lot of teams that, and it's historic teams that were kind of good in the past too in the West, right? For years, I mean, San Jose was in the conversation, right? I mean, St. Louis, of course, and Vancouver and Chicago. These teams some of them were kind of blue bloods in the Western Conference. I mean, in my lifetime, they were at least. A lot of them are in those transition periods, so it hasn't worked out quite a bit for some of them. But be sure to check out yesterday's episode. Talked about where do certain guys rank in terms of scoring for the Stars, goals, points, assists, and how does everybody fall in there. Thought it was fun to play a game and get your feedback on that. Feel free, drop your predictions as well in the comments. Where do the Stars finish this year? I know everybody's hyped. Everybody's just so much energy when I read your comments, and it makes me energized, which is great. So I'm so excited as the puck drops tomorrow. Okay, for the Western Conference, don't hate me. I'm going with Edmonton to win the West. I'm counting on Vegas to have a bit of a Stanley Cup hangover. I like Edmonton. It looks like they found their goaltender in Stuart Skinner last year, which has been a question for them for numerous years now. And he had a great year. We'll see if he does it again. And I just think Edmonton is just perfectly built for like regular season hockey, right? I think the Stars probably get past Edmonton in terms of like playoffs. I think they'll eventually be, further along than Edmonton will, but I think they're perfectly built. And of course, you have guys like McDavid and Draisaitl. We get that, and they're going to put everybody on, but they're much improved on the back end. Darnell Nurse is fantastic. Matthias Ekholm was so good for them. He was a really underrated trade deadline move for them, and he was phenomenal. Of course, he played all those years in Nashville. He's a stud, big guy, and plays on the penalty kill. He's serviceable on the offensive end. He's really good. So I like the Oilers to finish on top of the West this year. I'm going the Stars right underneath them, though. And the Stars played in the top three of the Western Conference for months on end last year. It was them and Vegas kind of flip-flopping for a while. I think Vegas and them met as two of the top teams at one point during last season. And Stars had a bit of that slide in February, kind of trickled into March, which they always kind of do. And every team goes through little slumps and stretches. And it's tough to do because it feels like if you lose 2, then you're losing by like 8 points. And it seems like the mountain grows so much every single day. But that's just the nature of it. I like Colorado in third, and then I have Vegas right after them. I think Vegas has a touch of a Stanley Cup hangover. They play a ton of hockey. Who knows with Stone and their health situation? How many games is he going to play? Can Aiden Hill really be Aiden Hill again? I know he was phenomenal, but is he going to be great for another season? Time will tell, of course, with that. Of course, they're phenomenal on the back end. There's no denying that. Haig, Martinez, Petrangelo's there again. Just phenomenal decor. They're probably still the best, and I think the level that these teams are trying to match. Just so deep at that position. And they have good lines. I mean, Marchessault's phenomenal. I mean, Jack Eichel is so great too. One of the very talented guys. Out of all the guys on Vegas, I was sort of happy for him for all the crap that he was catching in Buffalo and the issues that he was having with that front office. And then Vegas kind of gets him for a bag of chips. I hate to say it, but I was happy for Jack Eichel and what he did. So that kind of is my thoughts on the Western Conference and where it kind of stands. It went last year just for a review: Vegas, Edmonton, Colorado, Dallas, then the Kings, and the Kings, of course, were a bit of a surprise, but had a great series. Of course, they played Edmonton to the brink. They went to Game 7. That's a team that has to be watched out for. I like Seattle too, again, to improve. Man, that team is so good too. Seattle could have knocked out the Stars easily. The Stars did not show up to a few of those games, and they were dangerous there. And that's a team that just plays so hard, and they just grind you down. And the motor that crew has, it's hard to match on an every night basis. And they're hungry, and of course, I know you heard it 1,000 times, the Island of Misfits. Man, I was gonna lose my mind if I heard that one more time during that series, but it's kind of true, right? It's a mixture of those guys who are really good. Matty Beniers was phenomenal, of course. Calder trophy should have been Johnston. I digress. But the West will be good, and it'll be interesting again. I don't think it's very deep. It doesn't seem like you don't give much thought to like an 8 seed winning like you did when Los Angeles did it that one year in the West. It just seems like the upper echelon, the top 5 are kind of who are going to be battling at the end of the day to get a berth to the Stanley Cup. Edmonton, Vegas, Dallas, Colorado, and maybe you can throw in Minnesota in there. I like that crew too, as much as I hate to say that too. So I think the Stars finish in second. They finish with 110 points, 50 wins on the year, and they finish just behind Edmonton in the Western Conference, who is the Western Conference champs, those old Oilers who are trying to make a step in the right direction. But the Stars are trying to do the same and get over the hump. So that brings me to the next question. Where do the Stars end their season in 2023-24? What is the end goal? Do they make it all the way to the promised land? We'll see. You'll have to see. And we'll do that in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by Jace Medical. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jace Medical offers the Jace Case. The Jace Case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you a peace of mind so that you are not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure you have the medication in hand. Jace Medical is simple. They handle everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Get $20 off on these life-saving antibiotics today from Jace Medical by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout on jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Here we go, sliding in to the final segment on this Wednesday, October 11th. One more sleep. Puck drop between the Blues and Stars at the AAC. Hopefully the Stars can start off 1-0 and start their quest for a Stanley Cup. This one's very, very hard for me when I want to pick where the Stars end. And I'll be honest, I'm kind of a coward to say they win the Stanley Cup. And teams seem to go through those steps, right? Where you get so close, then you get beat, and then the next year you do it. You break through, right? And the Stars have kind of been on that trajectory. Lost in the first round a few seasons ago. Lost in the Western Conference Finals, of course, last year. Do they get there? It's really hard for me to say. I think they get to the Western Conference Finals, though. And I think they win it, is what I'll say. I do think they take the Western Conference this year. And for reasons that I mentioned when I began this podcast for the first time about being the best. They have great goaltending, number 1 net minding, elite goaltending, I should say, in Jake Oettinger. Top 10 in power play percentage, top 10 in penalty kill, top 5 in goals against average, top 5 in goals per game. They just have so many characteristics. And more importantly, they can win in a multitude of ways. At least they did last year. We haven't seen that, of course. Games haven't started, but I have a feeling that they're going to be able to. If you want to win a special teams battle, they can do that. If you want to be physical and you want to muck it up and you want to get in our faces and try to intimidate us, we'll do that again. Case in point, Minnesota series. You want to try to run and gun us to death and beat us just playing faster and have a high motor, we can do that too. We can light the lamp just as much as you can. Case in point, Seattle series. We can lock it down when need to be. when we have a 2-goal lead, 5 minutes left, we're going to shut it down. We have a great netminder net. We're a phenomenal defensive team. And DeBoer just, of course, unlocked this offensive potential that we had not seen right away at the drop of a hat last season. Stars were scoring so much. They had their stretches, of course, and slumps, but they were night in and night out, seemed like they had a chance. And that helps when they played from behind. They played from behind so much for years, and it caught up to them. It's just not a sustainable way to play hockey at this level. And they did it so much that I think it started to catch up to them. But last year, they led more often than not. And when they got in situations where they were behind, they could score. And in years past where they couldn't get those 3 goals in the third period if they needed to. But they could last year. It was pretty remarkable and fascinating, some of the comebacks they had last year. I think they get over the hump. I think they get to the Stanley Cup final. I feel like I'm too much of a coward to say they win it. Maybe you are not in the comments, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. So I don't want to jinx it, I guess you could say. I'm not going to touch the trophy, so to speak. We won the Western Conference. I'm not going to touch it. The Campbell Trophy. Just let it be. And the cards are going to fall how they may come June when the time matters the most. So that's kind of my prediction on how the Stars season ends. And maybe that's anticlimactic, but that's how I feel. I think they win the Central, second in the Western Conference. I think they win the Western Conference final. So deep. I think I undersold how great this Duchene deal is going to be. I am thrilled to watch him play with Seguin and Marchment, because you go and look, 86 points a couple seasons ago, had 56 and led the Preds last year. Man, if this guy gets 60 points this year, this team's going to be unstoppable. I mean, how are you going to stop this team with the depth they have? And DeBoer seems just really content with what he has. And it's nice that Fox, Rope, and Johnston look like they are good to go come opening night, and we're not going to have any issues there. Everybody's going to have a clean slate. And of course, this whole season, there's a lot of factors that come into it. Injuries and all that good stuff. Things have to go your way. Every run to a Stanley Cup, some of it can be fluky, but you got to have breaks. And there's luck. I'm a proponent. There is some luck involved in every team that wins a Stanley Cup. Of course, some teams are just better than everybody else. I get that. But sometimes you need to get lucky. The Bubble Cup, I think, was great for the Stars, right? They got lucky. They almost went down 3-1 in the first round of Calgary, got a late goal. They were on like the third, fourth-string goaltender of Colorado, and then they were playing a shell of the Vegas Golden Knights in the Western Conference. They still did it, and there's something to be said for that, but there is some luck involved, right? The Stars didn't win the Central Division last year. Seattle knocked out Colorado right away. If Seattle has to play Dallas in the first round, who knows how that series ends up, right? I think things kind of fall in place how they may, right? And you never know, and you can never be certain on how outcomes will happen, right? The results will always vary no matter what, but it's going to be such a fun season. So thank you once again, making this your first listen of the day on Locked On Stars. Tomorrow is the day. We'll jump into that, talk about a little bit Stars, Blues, and we'll have, of course, initial reactions on that game as well. So stay tuned for that. Very, very excited. Thank you so much. Happy game day eve, everybody. Enjoy tonight with some more hockey. Enjoy tomorrow, especially when the puck drops. So thank you so much once again. Go ahead and hit me up on the old Twitter X thing, Joy the Jet 19. Got some of my work on there as well. Go ahead and subscribe. Almost to 2,000 subscribers. Free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. That's going to wrap up today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me once again, and we will see you tomorrow. So long, Stars fans.